Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. It's Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab. I'm so glad to have you visiting our channel today. And if you are new here, this is something I do with my husband Chris. We take thrift store found items and we make them over and we share our vision and our process of what we do to these items to get them ready to resell. And we resell them here locally. We have a couple retail booths and a local antique mall. So if you're checking out today's video and you are excited about getting to the part 3 where I am doing the trays, here it is. So, and if you are new and you have not seen part 1 and part 2, they're down in my description box. Oh, you don't want to miss this part of texture painting. So I'm finishing up the series doing some trays. So, oh, you just wait. They turned out, yeah, I know that I say I love everything I do, but I do love everything I do. And I absolutely love how these trays turned out. So I'm so excited to share them with you. And I also threw in a little bit extra of some stamping on some tissue paper and some Dollar Tree canvases, because why not? I only had 3 trays to show you at this part 3, so I added a little bit of a bonus in.
So if this video looks familiar, you have watched my other 2 of this series where I'm redoing all of these textured paint techniques on all these items. So this video I am going to go ahead and do some of the trays. Yes, I needed to break this down into 3 videos. There was just so much detail. So yep, yet again, I'm starting right off by cleaning the objects. I always treat every single video as if it's the first time anybody is ever watching it. So if you already have seen this part, you can go ahead and fast forward. Though I did not have video of me cleaning any of the trays, I do have how dirty all these items were. Yuck. So after getting them all cleaned up, I just set them on boards because I carry them in and out of our spray room onto these boards. So I'm going to start off with giving a nice coating of Rust-Oleum's paint and primer in the flat black to these trays. Now just set them off to the side and let them dry. And the nice thing about using a flat spray paint is that it's not shiny when it is dry. So it is very easy to tell when your paint is dry. So now I'm going to go in with some Rust-Oleum clear coat to seal that black paint in before moving on. Now on my 2 trays, I'm going to have to flip them over and do the exact same thing. I'm going to have to paint them black and then seal that in with a clear coat. Because sometimes what you do on one side, you have to do on the other side. So now I let these set up overnight so they were nice and dry, especially since I needed to add tape to the sides of these. I'm just going to be going in and painting the tiles on these. So I am going to be using the texture paint where you mix, I'm going to be mixing some of the Waverly mineral chalk paint in with some baking soda, and it's a 50-50 ratio. So I'm just going to go in and start painting. Now I'm going to try to go into the one direction. I'm trying not going to fill up my paintbrush with too much paint. I don't want it running down where I put the tape in. I'll try to clean it up if it does. Things happen, but gonna go ahead and get all these little grout areas, we'll call it, because this is tiles, and then try to work in the same direction of painting. And then I painted each one of the pieces. Unfortunately, when I was doing all this video, I didn't know it was going to be so long that I needed to separate it out into 3 videos. Now when I'm going in for my second coat of paint, I just added the plain old mineral in there. I didn't add any more baking soda. I think it has plenty of texture to it. Now I let that paint sit up overnight so it would be good and dry. Now I'm just going in with my fine grit sanding sponge and just getting any over. I want it to feel a texture, but I don't want it to feel so rough that you don't want to touch it. So I'm just taking off any of those high spots. And trying not to get it down to the black, just trying to get off the high spots. Then after getting it as smooth to the touch as I'm looking for, I'm going to go in with some of the Waverly white wax and just wipe down the entire piece. That's just going to seal in that chalk paint for me and just give it a different little texture look to it. And I actually did the white wax on all 3 of the trays that you're going to be seeing me stencil on next. So now when I picked these up from the thrift store, I knew that I had these Waverly stencils from Walmart. And I'm like, oh, I know what I can use these for. So I'd already had these stencils when I had thrifted 2 of these trays. So unfortunately or fortunately, I'm sure they're made to be cut up. So I'm actually going to cut them into workable squares. If this wasn't a God wink moment, I don't know what is, because look at how perfectly they fit on top of those tiles. So now I'm just going to pick 2 of the stencils out and I'm going to flip-flop them. So I am super excited to do this. So I'm getting them all centered, but I don't trust myself to stay just on the stencil. So I'm going to go ahead and put some masking tape, but I have let that paint sit overnight, so I'm not too worried about the masking tape taking this textured paint off. So now I'm going to go in with this Dollar Tree stenciling brush just because I am loving this new technique that I learned from Melissa, and I'm going to link Melissa's channel and her business site, and she actually is so generous and to give you all a 15% off code that I'll also link down below. But she shared with us this wonderful technique of, instead of doing the sponge dabbing technique, she does this dry brush swirl technique. And I have to say, I am addicted. Oh my gosh, the final look of swirling it. Unfortunately, I have not, at the time of this video, have ordered a better stenciling brush. But for right now, while I was trying this technique out, I just bought a few at the Dollar Tree. And I like it, but when it comes to some of the stencils that I have, that brush is definitely not big enough, and it loses a lot of its bristles. But it'll do for this job, and thank you, Melissa. So check her out in my description below. So definitely the key with this is that you have minimal paint on this brush, so you really offload that a lot. So you just have a little bit of the paint, and so the swirling's just giving you a dusting of the paint. Especially on this texture, it's just grabbing that. Okay, I'm super excited to show you guys this reveal. You're just going to be in awe like I was. Oh, look at that. So like I said, I was going to flip-flop these. So every other one, I'm doing the other stencil on. So just moving along the line, make sure that one, since you did that very dry, there shouldn't be any wet paint on this stencil, but I did double check, so I wasn't making any kind of mess underneath that stencil. But I'm still going in with that masking tape and taping off those edges because I don't trust myself. So now I'm moving on to this next tile, and oh my gosh, there you go again. Look at how this perfectly fits. Now it is a little bit on the longer, a little bit wider, but it still fits. So, and this one's really kind of easy to center because it has some little points there in the middle. So I'm just centering that grout line, I'm going to call it the end of the tiles, with those center points. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to tape off that extra so that one, I'm not painting onto the tape, which would be okay, but I don't want my stencil to move as I'm stenciling on it. Now for this stencil, it would be a little bit better to have a bigger brush. So I'm really holding on to the swirling parts, hoping that it does not lift up. So same thing, offload a lot of that paint, make it sure that your brush has minimum paint on there and very dry. But probably with a bigger brush, I wouldn't chance of getting it in between the areas of the stencil. But yeah, I'll just go slow. Or for your viewing pleasure, I will speed up my time. So for this next tray, I'm going to go ahead and use some of these IOD sunflower stamps, and I'm going to be stamping them on some tissue paper. So I started right off with the biggest sunflower, and I just put it on my flexible stamping mount. And so now I'm just going and getting it all inked up using some stays on ink pad. Now I have to admit that I did refill the ink pad with IOD stamp because I was ordering from them. So do you guys mix stuff like that, or do you always like, oh no, I stayed with the stays on if I'm going to refill it? But I had done a lot of stamping, so I needed to refill it. So yep, I'm just going to very carefully put that down, making sure that I don't jump on my tissue paper. And then I'm taking this Cricut tool, actually the scraping tool, and then I'm just rubbing it along that stamp to make sure that that image is getting transferred onto that tissue paper. Now using that same piece of tissue paper, Dollar Tree tissue paper, mind you, that I am getting the smaller sunflower all inked up to put it on the same piece of tissue paper. Now for some space fillers, I'm going to go ahead and stamp up a couple of the leaves. To cut these out of the tissue paper, I'm just going to use that water technique where you put water on a little thin paintbrush and then you just outline the image that you want to cut out. And then you're going to go back through after you get that whole image, and then you're just going to slightly pull and that tissue paper is going to tear apart. It's the easiest way that you all shared this tip with me a while ago, and I am happy to share with others. After getting all those images cut out of that tissue paper or tore out of the tissue paper, I'm going to start visually figuring out which direction that these sunflowers will fit the best. Now it has that dip, so I'm going to have to definitely start down low when I start to Mod Podge them on. But I definitely think that this will just be a pretty accent piece. Just some nice sunflowers for the fall. So now that I've gone through and done my dry fit to see what everything fits on there, I'm just going to go ahead with some of the Mod Podge and start adhering it. So I'm just going to grab that flower, pull it up just a little bit, and start applying the Mod Podge to that bottom section of the tray. As you see, I am going up that little sides of it, and then I'm just going to start adhering it, working from where that first line that I put the Mod Podge and trying to work it out as smooth as possible. This way, if there is any creases, it might end up just in the middle, but it's actually laying out really nice. Long as I gingerly smooth it out with the Mod Podge, I think that it's going to be nice. And now I can go back around and do any of the little ends, any of the little corners that I didn't get in the first round as I'm working down the middle. And then I'm going to go in with the Mod Podge on all the edges and make sure that they are all down. Also, I'll go over the entire image with some Mod Podge to make sure it's good and adhered. And then I'll go back in with a wet wipe and clean off any of the excess Mod Podge, and then kind of tapping down those edges, making sure that they are not coming up. And then I'll go ahead and work on the next smaller sunflower in the same way, working from the middle of that sunflower up into that edge, making sure that my main focus first, that it's nice and flat. So I thought since I only had 3 trays to work on that I would show you this quick little project that I have actually done these before. So I was lucky enough to run across the Dollar Tree small canvases again. I'm going to be using my IOD animal stamps and some tissue paper, doing the same tissue paper stamping. But look at these perfect size canvases that fit these IOD animals. So any of you that have the IOD animals or you're interested in some of these stamps, oh my goodness. And this is, like I said, this is just a quick little easy if you're a reseller, if you want to make some gifts for somebody, or even if you just want to do this for yourself. These turn out so super cute. This is a pretty stress-free product, and this is just Dollar Tree tissue paper again. And now I'm just taking that sheep stamp, and then after I got it all inked out, I take my little Cricut smoothing tool, scraping tool, and then I'm just making sure that I got all that ink transferred, and voila, we have a perfect image. I should have double checked the sizing, but I'm thinking that these are a 5x7 canvases, so they are fitting these animal stamps perfectly. And for me, having an item that I can sell under $5 in my booth it's huge, because there's not a lot for a reseller or flipper of items to find anything nowadays that you can make over to sell for $5. So as I'm going down to lay down the pig, I hovered a little too low when I was deciding, and that was going to be blurry. So when you commit, you just got to commit and go straight down and put that stamp on that tissue paper. Now, I just want to share with you that rubbing the stamp like this with the scraping tool, maybe you have a Pampered Chef scraper, anything like, oh my gosh, these are the best images I've ever created out of stamps. I'm going to go ahead and do the cow because the cow fits also. And then if I flip the chicken, then the chicken fits perfectly too. And then you do that same technique where you take that paintbrush and then just go around the image to cut out and tear like I did on that earlier sunflower. We'll be adhering these with the Mod Podge also. I'm just centering as best to my ability and then just flipping that half over after I got it where I wanted and working from the middle out. And then after repeating the same steps that I used on the sunflower, I'm going to go in, and when I'm doing removing and making sure that there's not a ton of Mod Podge around the edges and making sure that the edges of the tissue paper are down, I'm going to kind of spread that Mod Podge out on the rest of the canvas, so when I go to finish this project up, the porosity is evened out. And then after getting my canvases all done, I'm going to set them off to the side and let that Mod Podge dry before proceeding on to the next step. So while those are drying, I'm going to show you how I finish. I'm going to be finishing up and adding some more detail to these trays. So I've got here is some Waverly antiquing wax, and I'm taking a smaller paintbrush and I'm just running it along where the tiles meet and on the edges. I'm going to be giving it a little bit of antiquing, a little bit of a shadowing. So I'm going in very slowly with not a ton of the antiquing wax on my brush. I'm kind of tapping it off, but I'm going to be going in between each one of these tiles and around the outer edge. So now I'm going to go in and blend that Waverly wax in. What I have in my hand now is a dried out wet wipe, and so I'm just going in and blending that harsh line in first, just making sure that it's all kind of dispersed around. And after getting that blended a bit, I'm going to go in and I'm going to just lightly touch a wet wipe, and then just touch it with my finger just to add a little bit of water, a little bit of liquid, so I can blend it up even a little bit more. So it's kind of making a lighter shading as I'm going in. And I'm just staying on the edges of the pieces. I'm not running it over the entire tile. So now I have this tile. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go around the outer edge with this Waverly antiquing wax with the paintbrush. I'm going to go back in with that same dry cloth, just dampening it just a little bit for some control, and then just blending in that Waverly wax, working it. It's giving it that nice antiquing. Now I want to give it the look that these are 4 separate tiles, so I'm going to go in very gingerly. I'm not going to put a lot on. There's just a little bit of that mineral showing, so I'm just going to go ahead and just work in those areas, and then I'll really go back in and take a lot of it off, just enough to shade it so you can tell that there's 4 separate tiles. Now on this tray with the sunflowers, I did go around the whole outer edge with that Waverly antiquing wax. Now I'm just going in and doing that same where I'm blending it and shading it in just to give it that nice aged look. Along with putting some of the antiquing wax just on the flower itself just to give it that aged look that I'm looking for. Nice thing is if you keep a wet wipe handy, you have the control to take off. Whatever you put on, you can take off until you just get it to the way that you like it. Now to remove the tape on both of the 2 trays, I am going to heat that tape up with a blow dryer. That tape's actually been there for a couple days, so I want to make sure that it's not going to be pulling off any of my paint. Now, if you like these canvases as is, you can keep them just this way. But for me, I like to antique them. So I'm going to go around with a wet wipe and some more of that antiquing wax. And then just rub it on each one of these canvases. I'm not going to forget the outer edges. I'm not going to frame these. These are going to be what they are. And then after that antiquing is dry, I'm going to go in with some Rust-Oleum clear coat and get these sealed in.
Okay, what did I say? I thought those trays turned out amazing. And I know I say this, I love everything I do, but I do. I vision it, I love it. Oh, I hope that Walmart still has those Waverly stencils. I'll try to link them in the description box because I know those kind of tile things I see at the thrift store all the time. So hopefully in your area you'll run across something. But I definitely think those just took those to a whole another level. So, and those sunflower stamps, oh my goodness. Anyway, so I thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope that you guys liked that tissue paper on those little canvases. You know, for me as a reseller, finding something that I can resell under $5, even those cement birds from the Dollar General, oh, you know, some people just like a quick little grab and go of a $5 and less item. So it's really hard for us flippers, or us resellers, to find anything that you can resell for under $5. So I hope that I've shared a little tip. I gave you an idea, and maybe you already knew the idea. So I thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope I have inspired you in any way to lift look at thrift store find items in a new way. And thank you so much for being part of my YouTube family. Your kind compliments, your thumbs up, just all helps my channel grow and helps YouTube recommend us even more. So, and if you checked out this content for the first time and you liked what you saw, don't forget to pop over and see part 1 and part 2. They're down in my description box. And hit that subscription button along with the notification bell, and we'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye.